There's no
good.
point to life.
Here's a link.
What's the point of listening to any
it's like
podcast?
over an hour. Sometimes I don't even know.
All right, let's get rolling. All right, we're gonna do a shorter show because we have a bunch of cues to catch up on.
Cool.
And then we'll do this thing. So, okay, we're back. Combat-based podcast. We're joined by the CEO, Melissa Haueter,
AKA Boss Lady.
aka Boss.
Boss Lady.
We got the venerable.
Chris Haueter.
Okay, check. Sunni Imhotep. Tobin here, and we're gonna hit some topics today. I wanted to talk about martial crafts.
Martial craft.
Martial craft. What is that?
Martial crap.
Well, obviously, like any of these philosophical terms, we're opening up a big can of worms. Because a lot of times, what I've observed in arguments, whether they're arguments over religion or ideology or things, is people are arguing thinking their interlocutor has the same definition as they have with the word. And when you start talking about art, what is art? Everybody has an opinion on what is art, including highfalutin people and the common guy. There's, oh, that's not art. Or what is bad art as opposed to a good art? So art is a whole fucking can of worms of what makes something art. And I would argue that everything is art. And at the same time, nothing is art. Because it really does depend on one's perspective. It's the Hegelian approach, which is kind of like one of the things that Einstein did that was so revolutionary. One could call him the first postmodern approach to science, is that space and time were variables. So instead of us thinking we exist in time, time moves around us, and time is relative to the observer. But because the speed of light is so fast, we don't notice it until you're approaching the speed of light. And then there's a hockey stick curve at how much it alters. But if you applied that same view on art, so most of the time we'll all agree that's not art, that art, and then all of a sudden we hit this phase here in the hockey stick where it rapidly jumps on whether a person has a strong opinion or not, right? And craft is what I think of as how skilled are you at your job? Let's say you're a guy who hangs doors, repairs old windows. Is that art or is that a craft? He's really good at the craft of cutting the perfect cut, sanding the edge on the wood. He's an excellent craftsman. Art supposedly transcends craft, which is why you have people who I think are terrible craftsmen, but great artists. And some artists who are good at the craft part of it, at painting an accurate line, but is it art?
So then would you say that the craft, based on what you're saying, is someone who understands the principles and fundamentals of whatever it is that they're doing?
Yes.
And they can do that by the book very well. And then the art is how well you can use the fundamental knowledge or not use it, but create something beautiful out.
Make your own thing out of it.
Got it.
Art is the personalization of an idea or a thing. So like as a perfect example is a ballet. There is a craft to ballet. You have to know first position, second position, the arabesque. Like there's clearly a craft where you could be a highly skilled ballerina or ballerino, whatever the guys are called.
I think they're ballerinas too.
Ballerinas. And when it becomes art is the choreography, the original dance and all that. And I think in a lot of ways, martial arts are sometimes called art too quickly. I think it's mostly combat sport craftsmen.
Well, I know this one guy named Chris Haueter who used to do a lot of construction.
Yes.
And one time he built a gate, and it was actually art.
Oh, my metal steel.
And it ended
gate.
up in a book.
It did. It ended
Right?
up
Because
in a book.
Chris would do craft, but then oftentimes, more than just with that gate, I think that he would bring an element of art into it. So I think that it is more, as Chris would say, nuanced than just a dialectic.
I would say. I don't want to pump up my own self, but if you're an artist out there of any kind, you're usually the hardest on yourself, but you also have a blind spot of where you think what you made is so beautiful and good, and the viewers just don't see that. And that's that game of art, is how do I get somebody really fucking rich to think that I have this great artsy idea, and then once people place a value on it as being rare, then it goes up. And if everybody's just pumping out the same schlock, even if it's done really well, it's not rare. Then it's usually the first guy gets the most. But I would also say, I'm ringing that damn, I missed a doctor appointment this morning like an idiot.
Well, we can't be perfect.
I lost my line of thought where I was, because now I feel like a schmuck, because the craft of being organized, I'm really bad at.
Thus the CEO component, because I might not be needed if he was better at organization.
So let's take as an example here, one of the favorite films amongst the Gen Xers and millennials, Fight Club.
My favorite movie.
So there is an art to how it was shot, framed, and themed. There's an art to the original story, and the actors itself, in my opinion, really proved their artistic skills of acting in the film. So it gets all three. I like threes, right? There are other movies where when you watch, or I watch, I'm like, God, had they filmed this better, it would be great. Had they got those Breaking Bad single camera movements in there, it would have been so much better. And most people don't see that part. What you see is when the editing sucks. But when it's really good, you're so engrossed in the thing, you don't even realize how well it was shot. Like, God, the way they panned that right after he talked, or like that, like, my opinion on it.
I was kind of thinking about the way I view like more traditional martial arts situations where you have a teacher that's teaching a group of students, and the teacher is transmitting their martial art. So this is something that they've developed. They've learned something, they've put their own art into it, and then now they have their own martial art that they're now sharing with the group of students, and the group of students are receiving that information as craftsmen. So they're learning the craft that's being handed to them by doing exactly what they're being told, and then they go off, and when you add your own finding the leverage, finding the weight distribution, finding the base that's particular to you, that's where it then turns into your martial art. So as a student of a martial arts school, you're not actually being taught martial arts, you're being taught martial craft.
Yes.
From the instructor.
Unless if it's a good coach. But
okay. I would disagree with that. And the reason I would disagree with that is because technically speaking, unless I'm about to make it very complicated, but if we're doing a martial art, right, and we're obviously going to say technically it's martial craft, right, because you're supposed to be learning the basics and foundation of that particular art. If that's the case, there are basics that everyone should know from that art. And if your instructor is not teaching you the basics and foundations of the art, but what he finds or she finds as to be their specialty, their part of it, then you're not learning the actual art. You're learning their version, not the version with his spice added in here and there, his extra moves here and there. It's always going to be only what he has to show you and not the foundational aspects of it. Like an example of that, I think for jiu-jitsu would be if you're learning, if you come from a traditional school, you're going to learn how to do an armbar. They're going to use the word armbar. You're going to learn how to do a knee bar. You're going to learn how to pass the guard, stack pass, pressure pass, X pass, Toriando. You're going to learn all these different things. You're going to learn the words for them. But then if you go to 10th Planet, they're not learning that shit. You know what I mean? They're learning something completely different that people would argue is not foundational jiu-jitsu. You're learning Eddie Bravo's style of jiu-jitsu, right?
Well, let's let's go in the art of boxing. Like some could easily argue, boxing is the simplest of all the combat arts, but the most hardest to master. Look at Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. Two different styles, both incredible, like arguably the world's best. And people will always say, like, if they like Mike more, well, Muhammad Ali was already, Mike Tyson would have killed Ali. No, Ali would have tuned him up because he knew how to work the ring. And so, like, who knows, right? But it's still jab, cross, hook, uppercut, overhand, footwork, slip, bob, weave. And it's a simple art, but you spend the rest of your life mastering it. I always say you can learn how to box in a weekend clinic, but you will spend the rest of your life trying to learn how to box. Whereas a jiu-jitsu, you forget more than you can remember because it's more complex. And I don't mean complex in a, like, jiu-jitsu's more smart and complex. I mean, just in a more, for some, there's reasons, but it's just a more complex.
Well, we got
skills,
legs, knees, ankles, wrists,
there's
arms, shoulders, where boxing's punch.
Yes.
Right.
There's no agreement on what the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu are.
No.
That is it right there.
There's
Right,
there's no agreement. And what I consider the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu that I teach are going to be vastly different than what you'll find at Gracie University or what Chris might consider, or any instructor is going to have their own take on these are the foundational skills. There's always going to be overlap, but it's never going to be exactly the same. So in a way, that's the art part being applied to the craft, is me differentiating what for me in my journey was fundamental and passing that on to my students, or what I think might be fundamental. I have to think what might be fundamental for a heavyweight person versus, because I don't know what it's like to be a heavyweight person, but I've taught heavyweight people. And so I have to think based on my experience and observing others, what's fundamental for different body types, because you also apply that. Not every move what works for every person either. That's another huge part. And then games are based on personality and body type and injuries. There's so much. It's so nuanced. It's so highly nuanced that it's hard to just bring it to one specific thing.
This is what jiu-jitsu is.
I see your point, Melissa. My only thing that I would add to that would be, you could say the same thing for the example that Chris mentioned, which is like boxing only has like 5 or 6 punches, right? But to your point, every person in boxing still has to know how to throw a jab, how to throw a cross, a hook, all these things. But because of their body type, their temperament, all of these different things, they're going to use those tools or not use them at all in different ways. Muhammad Ali is going to use a jab very differently than Mike Tyson will use a jab. Mike Tyson's going to use a hook very differently than, Muhammad Ali didn't even really use hooks.
No.
Mike Tyson's going to throw punches to the body based on his style and his height, whereas Muhammad Ali barely threw one body shot in his entire career. So but they all know how to do it. And I think that is the point, is that even if your body type may not fit, or you're not the right height, or you're not the certain size that a certain technique would fit, you still got to know how to do it.
But I argue with that just a little bit, because I've never really been that good. Let's say a heel hook. I don't really get it. It's not my thing. I would never try to teach that to people. I'm not really good at toe holds. That's what's the one? No, straight ankle locks.
Straight ankle lock.
I never really got that. There's certain moves and techniques that I gravitate towards. And so I wouldn't ever attempt to like claim to be an expert at it and show it to somebody.
Sure.
You know?
Well, like
but I don't think that takes away from my jujitsu.
No,
Not
no.
knowing like 2 moves.
Yeah.
You know the
couple
move.
of
I don't know it. I don't understand how it fundamentally works. And for whatever reason, I have a block in certain areas. And because jujitsu is so vast and I'm so good at so many other things and teaching so many other things, I don't feel like that's a detriment to my art. Because I think that most people probably do have some things that they don't get unless they're really arrogant and they just think they know it all.
Yep. Well, you wrote out a list of what you considered to be what should be the combat-based fundamentals, like a couple years back.
Well, I called
That's pretty good.
I called it Melissa Haueter's thing.
Yeah.
I didn't call it combat base because this is my interpretation, and
Yeah.
I think that if you were teaching something, or if someone organized you, I think it would look much different than mine.
Yes.
This is like a year-long curriculum that I would take brand new white belts through, where at the end I would feel that they had gone over what I consider the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And if you liked it, I'm happy to hear
I liked
that.
it. Yeah.
I did too.
Um,
I have a copy of it.
But
Yeah.
as I step out even broader, I have to include stand up, clinch, and ground.
Mhm.
And that's what I find most sports schools have a very narrow view, because pulling guard is rewarded in the jiu-jitsu only sport. It tends to be punished in a street and or MMA. And I think so environment trumps will every time. And as a coach, I'm trying to create an environment that always thinks street. So you're worried about hands, kicks, and feet and being clawed. And you train the sport, because you need to train in the sport because you're offered real resistance from peers to know if it works. And you're practicing the art. And in that art part is where I would put the fundamentals.
I kind of feel like the art part is where, so this is the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the way that it is you show up as a student and you become a craftsman of what your teacher is teaching you.
Yes.
So that should be the mindset going into the school situation or into the teacher-student relationship, was that your intention is to be a craftsman of what this teacher's art is.
Yes.
And then once you become a good craftsman of that teacher's art, then you add your own. It turns into your art when you start to find base on your own, based on the moves that you've been shown. You find your own base, your own leverage, and your own weight distribution on these techniques, and then it becomes your own art.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it feels to me. And I feel like it's super analogous to construction work, like you were saying. Like, you need to know these like particular skills.
You know how to pour the foundation and build a frame.
And I feel like construction's actually not like boxing. Like, there's like a million different skills that you need to know in construction to be like generally like black belt level construction.
Competent.
Yep.
And guys
It's
that
more
are
complex.
black belt level construction are very aware that there's like a lot of stuff that they don't know, and that they have like specialties in certain areas, and that there's certain things that they don't fundamentally understand, you know?
Or they're afraid to do because they might get electrocuted. Like Chris does not mess with electrical.
I hate electrical. I get
do
shocked
electrical.
all the fucking time when I fuck with
I
electrical.
get in there. I get in there and
You're not ADHD though, Tobin.
I am. I think it's off, or I'm like, I don't want to change that. I just won't touch the wires.
But I think the construction analogy is great, because I think you can kind of really see how a construction guy can be like an amazing craftsman at like.
Yes.
But then like when the floor's not level, or things are a little out of whack or whatever, it's really the artistry that comes into play, where you're able to like figure out how to make everything line up and work. And
He's really good at that,
I
Chris.
completely agree.
Yeah.
I'm pretty, I mean, I don't want to be arrogant, but I'm pretty good at construction and fixing, repair things. And God, especially in the age of YouTube, I swear, I feel like I could fix anything now.
My mom
totally.
too.
Yeah.
I like, you kind of have a little style to your handyman work, where you don't necessarily always use like the right part.
Yeah.
but like everything kind of matches in a way, and you kind of have a little.
I like to personalize.
You
my
have a little
handyman
style
work.
to your
Yeah,
handyman
I
work.
do.
It's a little like, yeah, I don't know what the right word is, but it's like a little rustic style.
But like,
handyman work. It's
I'll
cool.
look back on some project I've done, like next door, and I'll look at it and I'll cringe. I'll go, God, how did I think that looked good? Like, why did I think ornate crown molding looks good in a 8-foot tall a beach a cottage house?
Oh, you mean
That's-
in your mom's
yeah,
house?
That's fucking horribly ugly, I think.
You're in your Art Deco mode.
So
You
yeah,
were really artsy. It
Yeah.
was cute. Like I was always really, when I first met him and came to his house, I was really impressed by all of that and that you had done all that yourself.
yeah, I
was
cringe at all
impressive.
that now. Just cringe.
Well, so my
Fine.
question is, should we call it martial crafts instead of martial arts?
Arts and
Like
crafts.
if you're gonna go do,
Let's call it arts and crafts.
if you're gonna
Martial
go-
arts and crafts.
Arts and
please?
crafts is the
Family,
best
can we
name of
change
it.
it?
Yes.
If you're gonna
it's arts
go
and crafts.
to Taekwondo school, are you going to a martial crafts school or are you going to a martial arts school? Are you learning to be a craftsman or a martial artist? I think it should be arts and crafts.
It should be arts.
I don't
Martial
know.
arts and crafts.
Or farts and craps.
I say that. I've said this to people. And you can tell it offends them. They're like, crafts? No way. man."
Yeah, I feel that right now. I'm like,
It sounds
it's
like an
bothering me
insult.
just the
Yeah.
word craft. I'm like,
Mixed-
it's art though.
Cindy's a professional mixed martial arts and craftsman.
Yeah, I like it. Bring it down. Humble it a little bit.
He's
Simmer
really
down.
good at knitting.
Yeah,
and
knitting is craft.
Bead design.
It's absolute craft, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But creating your own pattern
Yeah.
is art.
Yeah.
My friend made a really nice
Yep.
soccer ball
Soccer
pattern
ball,
for
yeah.
Andy and knit this whole, or it was crochet, I think. But anyways, it's very,
Yeah.
very artistic.
But okay, because I don't like the word craft, I'm gonna add that maybe it's art inherently because no matter what you do, you're always gonna tailor it to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
So
agree
it's
with
always
that.
gonna be in some way, shape, or form yours.
Mm.
Like
Yes.
if I learn a pass from Chris, I'm going to learn it the way he taught me. But then
Yeah.
as I continue to do the pass, somewhere along that line, I'm going to tailor it to something that I like or my body
Mhm.
type or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And the grip that was here may end up being down here, or the way I
Mhm.
put my
Yeah.
foot may end up over here because he's a little bit shorter than me. So my leg has to, you know what I mean? So I think
The sales
No more
pitch,
craft.
though. But in that being said, the sales pitch is come develop your martial arts at Chris's Martial Crafts.
Martial
Yes.
craft store.
And that's
That's why it's called Marshalls.
Chris's
Isn't that the
fabric.
craft store?
The-
Oh no, it's
no,
Michael's.
that's
Michael's.
Michael's.
No, there's a Marshall's too.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Marshalls is like
crafts.
discounted
It's like
clothes.
discount.
Yeah.
But when I teach, I often say, this is where I like to hold this. This is
Yeah.
where I like to do this. This is
Yeah.
what works for me. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work this way for you, especially if you're 6 feet tall and I'm 5'2". It's like,
Yeah.
it's different, right? So anyways.
I mean,
Yeah, like 8 years ago when I went and had lunch with Hickson, I'd like turned 50 and I'm realizing
That
I'm
was 10
aging.
years ago.
Or 10 years ago, yeah. And I'm trying to I felt like a new inspiration to relearn Jiu Jitsu. And I remember Hickson, right off the bat, he was, Chris, I'm not going to show you anything you don't already know, but I will show you the essence, the invisible part of the art of Jiu Jitsu. I'm like, yep, that's what I want. And because as Hickson's age, he's no longer athletic and acrobatic. So it's very much an art that I can learn, and I will call it an art that I can grow with into my old age, rather than trying to learn the new inversion twist to leg bar move. And not that I don't think that's cool. I love it. And I still, for me, a De La Riva guard is an absolute fundamental. Hickson would not agree.
Mhm.
But it doesn't mean that I don't want to learn from the guy who does the De La Riva or Hickson. Because what I get from Hickson is, it's hard to explain. It's almost more of a feel. And I've gone to tons of mini groups with Hickson, and quite often the 2 or 3 of us who left, I realized I get something out of that they did not. They think they learned step 1, 2, and 3. I learned a feel. I learned a connection. I learned a whole different thing, along with a simplistic version of step 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, that's immediately what I was thinking of when I was kind of saying like that the artistry is putting your own base, your own leverage, your own weight distribution like onto the craft that you now
Yes.
learn. It made me think of
Well,
Hickson.
one of the things that I picked up, and this is my words, not Hickson, I realized, and this is like when I was 52 or 3, there's balance and there's base. And people confuse them as being the same thing. And like that opened up a whole window where suddenly I could be training with some black belt who's really good at this thing, but they have no idea why they are good. They think it's, because you grab here, hook here, and then move. And it's like, no, because you grab and you slightly hung here. You waited until the reaction. Like that's what I like call the more nuanced part of this art that I feel like I've gotten better at in the last 10 years, even though my athletic skills are waning.
And you also talk about like the micro adjustments that are
Yes.
happening like in the moment in real time that nobody can really teach you. You have to be able to feel
You
it.
got to
Like
feel it.
that's the real invisible
Yes,
part
yes.
of the whole thing.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's like, think of like a case of a Gatami, right? So last night I'm instructing the escapes, but we all know guys who, when they hold us in there, we cannot get the fuck out. No matter how much I practice my 3 bomb-proof escapes, you are stuck because they have micro-adjusted to all of your escape routes.
And they're feeling it right in that moment.
Yes.
It's not like you have a chance to get out because as soon as you
Yep.
slightly shift, they slightly shift to counter every single thing.
On planet Earth, gravity really matters. If we were on the moon, my escapes would all work. If we were on a slightly larger planet, I'd be fucked the minute they pass my guard because gravity matters that much more, right? And weight distribution is a huge part of how you react to your opponent's base and balance.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you, what is the difference between base and balance?
I'd have to show you because you got to feel it. Because
Okay.
It's invisible. Come
But
on, my friend.
I would like to say something though about that too, though. Like I feel like you need to have balance to
Yes.
have base, but you don't need to have base to have balance. You can have balance without base. I can stand on one foot
Yes.
and hold a yoga pose like this. That is not base.
And hop around the room.
Or
Yep.
pop or whatever. But
Okay.
in order to hold a good base, if I don't have some
Base.
element
Yep.
of balance,
Yes.
I'm going to fall over. So
They
it's like
need each
one is
other.
depend.
Yep.
I don't think that balance needs base as much, though. You know what I'm saying? Like if
I
I'm
agree.
standing on one leg like this, I think you can knock me over pretty easy.
Yeah.
I need to have
Okay.
the tripod effect.
So the base, based on what you're saying, is the ability to not be moved in any direction as easily, and balance is how you can stay not.
Not fall over.
The balance is while movement is happening more.
Okay.
Base is more when you're still.
Got
But
it.
they each kind of need each other. And I forgot.
That makes sense though.
Earlier
He
I
doesn't
had-
really understand.
It does make sense.
I forgot it.
He just feels it.
I had a great analogy and then it just left my brain.
Can I give you one that
Yes.
that I think I understand a little bit better? If you are, let's say you're in someone's guard and they have a butterfly hook.
Yep.
You know that they want to sweep you, so you have heavier base.
Yeah.
But maybe they adjust and they do something to where they get the angle and now they're going to start to take you over. Your balance will
yeah.
adjust your hips so that you don't get toppled over and you kind of stay even though your base may have been compromised.
I would say that your balance helps you regain the base that you
It
need.
does.
Yeah,
Right?
okay.
And because
Yes.
I used to have really bad balance. And right? Balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have bad balance, but I started doing yoga. And then my balance became better, which I think made my base even better. My base wasn't bad even when I didn't have balance because I had the concept of base, but it was improved by having good balance.
Yes. And like, I also think of it as, and it's only analogy, so it's not the thing, but it's like electrical. When you're grounding is when you're connecting yourself to not just your opponent, but the ground, feeling the earth. And then what you find in there is where is the base. Like one of the things that I love as I take my bags, and when you put this bag on you up here, now
Are you on a camera? Down in the middle. Be on a camera.
So here, if I overlean, I'm gonna really, I can't adjust, right? But I'm really balanced and I can. But if I have perfect base, then I can move where I can feel. That's just kind of an example of it.
What it made me think when you're asking about the butterfly hook situation is there's the artistry of the weight distribution.
Yes.
So like if someone has a butterfly hook and then they adjust to try to sweep you, you adjust your weight distribution, which informs your base that you have, and then you can maintain a good base. So it's like the wind. That's the thing that's hard to teach, right? Like how do you show somebody, like go from 60% weight on your left leg to, to like 30
But that's
for a moment. Just for a second though.
That's the argument though, Tobin, for why people need to roll to really get better. Because if you don't roll, you can't you can't learn this stuff. You can't learn it without rolling.
So here's the deal then. So if you're not rolling, you're a martial craftsman.
100%.
100%.
You're doing
arts and crafts.
You're not doing the art if you're not rolling.
But I think a judo, as currently basically taught, everyone has its own thing, has a perfect balance of, or perfect metering of base and balance. And because of the way it's taught, you're going to learn the craft of a judo almost like everybody else does.
Totally.
Right?
You have to, or you can't progress in your ranking, right?
Yeah.
It's very detailed.
Yeah,
and
you have to be a
many people
craftsman.
say that's how a jiu-jitsu ought to be taught. And some people think that they've formulated what that is.
Mm-hmm. I think that's arrogant.
It's definitely a personal
it's a lot.
thing.
Yeah.
But like, there are guys who I get knowledge from, who I'm pretty sure because I've rolled with them that I out-roll them. I can beat them. But I'm learning things from them way more than I learn when I'm rolling with like the current young champion of the world. I don't learn a lot. It's a funner roll, even being totally
funner when they're on your back choking you out, baramboling the shit out of you.
The shit out of you, and like fucking, how do they do that? Yeah, it's like being stuck in a good hold down. It's like this is supposed to work, but the guy's his micro adjusting that he's unaware of often how it is or how much it's reliant upon athletics, but it's still really cool expression of the art.
Yeah, it just made me think like Jay. I'm teaching Jay the Nage no Kata for judo.
Yeah.
Jay will beat my ass standing and on the ground 75, 85% of the time that we train. But I'm a better craftsman at judo than he is.
Yes.
Because you've done the classes.
So
he
he's
hasn't.
coming to me to learn the craft of judo.
Yes.
And I'm teaching him the craft of judo.
And he's going to beat the shit out of you once you teach all that.
Right?
See, okay.
So
I have a question.
I'm
for
a
you.
martial craftsman in judo. I'll claim craft.
So now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I've had this discussion many times. I'm curious to see what you all say about it. If you know that skill-wise, crafts-wise, you are better, but in application, the person bests you, does that mean that they're better than you?
They're better artist or athlete.
Artist and athlete, not a better craftsman. Ha.
Okay.
Not all around better, right? We can all have our good things.
And the reason I asked that is because where that came from originally was because I said that Chris Weidman was better than Anderson Silva because he beat him. Obviously, I understand Anderson Silva is a much more skillful fighter, better craftsman, right? But Chris Weidman knocked you out. So, like, you can't say that you're better if the person, especially at the skill of striking is where he got you. You can't say that you're better than him if he knocked you out.
Yeah.
It's
You can know that you know more,
Yes.
but you cannot talk shit.
Maybe his wind was bad that day. Maybe he was getting over a cold.
Can't say shit about it.
Well, yeah, it's like but Jake Paul versus Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
I wish Tyson wouldn't have taken that.
Yeah.
Because I'm old, and I know what it's like to be old and be in the middle of a roll thinking, God, 20 years ago, I would have easily danced around that. And you're like, fuck, I can't do it, right?
Yeah.
I wish he wouldn't have taken that fight.
I think he was freaking didn't give a shit. He wanted some dough.
Right.
We all need
doesn't
dough.
care.
We all need dough.
He's let go. And he doesn't care. And I think I like the conspiracies that say that he was pulling back punches and stuff. Because I think Mike Tyson fucking smoked that guy.
But like, okay, here's an example. This is where I like to really pull apart the fan from the athlete or artist. Is why does it matter to me that Mike took that? That's a very weird, like,
because you identify with him.
Why should I?
Because you're his same
because
age.
I identify.
You're his same age.
And that's why.
Pretty much.
That's why, to me. So I'm mad because I want to protect my ego, wherever I'm at. What am I like? Where does this feeling come from in me? And why does the young guy have the way he feels, or the heavyweight feel the way he does about the lightweight? I mean, it's understanding that I am coming from a relative perspective. It's okay to feel what I feel, but I can't start thinking it's facts. And that's where people get fucked up, in my opinion, with ideology. And religion is because we start thinking things that we feel, and they're true, that those now are facts about the universe. It's all Newton's laws. It's like, no, it's not all, right? We can prove how that isn't what's happening when we get to these higher things, or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting. Makes me think of, there's this guy on the internet, this like big buff dude who like interviews a lot of people and does like podcasts and all. I don't even know what his name is. You might know. I don't know. The big buff guy.
When you tell me more.
Big buff dude.
And he
.com.
has all
The old
these,
guy, how old, how young, hair, no hair, is he bald?
What does he wear? What does he do? What's his? Is he married? Is he single?
he is a big buff dude, and he's probably in his 20s, and he has like professional MMA fighters on his show and stuff. But he'll ask them like, "Who wins in a street fight, me or you?"
Oh,
he's like a big buff guy.
Bradley Martin.
Something like that.
He did that with Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah, and then these guys like,
and he did that with Nate Diaz too.
I feel that same way. I watch the MMA fighter. I'm like, of course, like the skilled craftsman and the.
Oh no, but he did it though, and he got destroyed.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he did it with some jiu-jitsu guy, and he got ragdolled.
But I think about that's the guy. That's the martial
fan
artist
who has no idea the skills involved in the craft.
Yes,
but that's the threat to the martial artist. Right?
Yes,
we see and we go like, "Fuck this guy! This is the guy that we hate."
Yes, go beat his ass.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of you? I don't know. Maybe you guys are still young enough where you enjoy it, but like, you're going to get a haircut, or worse, you're getting your teeth cleaned, and they're asking you fucking questions. Oh, my son does taekwondo. It's a lot like what you do, and you're like, have this thing. I want to fucking tell you no. But like, I hate that talk.
That used to happen to me.
You sit down, have a haircut. Oh, your ears are messed up. You must have done whatever they think is. You're just like, oh God.
UFC. You must have done UFC.
I went through
UFC.
security.
Do you do UFC?
I went through security at a federal building the other day, and the guy at the building was like, put all your weapons into the tray if you have any, or like, or not weapon. No. He was like, do you have any weapons on you?
You say, I am a weapon.
No. I was like, I think he saw my ears. So he's like, do you have any weapons on you or anything? And then I was like, no, I'm all good. And then like, he was like, I guess you're the weapon, huh?
He was hitting on you.
I was like,
Hello. With your karate.
Well, and like, would you rather watch a beautiful choreographed to look real martial art a fight scene, or would you rather watch two totally untrained guys swinging windmills at each other, right? And so the windmill one sometimes
I'm on the fence
is
about
more
that.
interesting.
what time
I was
of
about to
day?
say I'm on the fence
What
about that
time of
one.
day?
I like choreography.
'cause you know why?
Choreography.
There's this channel that gets so many views. It's called Street Beefs. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's amazing, right?
Street beefs.
Because
Yeah,
it's
that's a
literally
guy thing.
it's literally all untrained people, and they just give them gloves.
See, I would
and,
love
like,
to watch that.
It's great.
That's way more
I
interesting.
prefer
great.
choreography, not
It's like
interested.
in the backwoods of like Arkansas or something.
It's
like that. They have
fantastic.
an octagon, but it's like
Yes.
pieces of plywood.
Yeah.
And some dudes have some skills.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do.
I mean, there was that phenomenon that paralleled the rise of MMA when people were just having unlicensed MMA in
That's
the
true.
What
backyards.
was that called? Bum fights? Was that what that was?
Bum fights!
was
Holy
the
shit.
original one.
That was
Yeah.
the
That's
original.
where Kimbo came from, and from George
Yep.
Masvidal.
No, was that bum fights that they
Yeah,
did?
no,
think it was.
Kimbo
What was-
came slightly after.
What was
Bum.
his
Yeah,
one?
I forgot
that
what
one
it
called?
was.
The one with Kimbo and George Masvidal?
It was just bare knuckle. I mean, they were only boxing though.
There was a name for it online.
I
though.
forget.
'Cause that was when I was in
Yeah.
college. I remember watching that stuff
Yeah,
and being like,
yeah.
oh, yeah.
Beavis.
I love in street beefs. I love in street beefs.
Oh, he punched him. Shut up. He didn't punch him. Oh yeah.
I like in street beefs when there's a big takedown and you just hear the like. There's no. It's like dirt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you
And
hear
you
the
just hear
air
this,
go.
like, thunk.
and the guy goes,
oh, yeah, and you're like, oh my god.
"It's great."
You know, though, like as I've aged, and maybe because I have kids, I cringe more.
Oh,
watching
total.
that.
It's a total cringe.
And then that's
cringe.
that
Super
whole
cringe.
argument. And of course, people are going to think I'm trying to be an elitist, a snob. But I always ask, is this good for society?
No,
It seems to me like it is
Exactly.
it's not.
The only thing that makes me cringe is leg locks when people don't tap.
not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the only, like if people send me those videos, I'm like, just don't even. I'm not gonna watch it. Please
Those are
don't.
painful to
Yeah.
watch. No, but there's a lot of stuff that I get into that is not good for society. I don't know,
Yes.
but it's hard to walk around.
Because we're both attracted and repelled.
Yeah, it's
I'm
hard.
just repelled.
It's hard to walk around going like, I'm only going to do things that are good for society. It's a
Yeah,
tough road.
Then you got to stick up your fucking ass. And
I guess I have a
Yeah.
stick up my.
And like in that sense, one could say that the total woke left and the religious right in some ways have more in common because they're obsessed with regulating the behavior of society as a whole.
Yeah, I could see that. The meta.
Yeah.
Well, I
the
like
meta thing,
yeah.
the meta.
I don't feel that
Situation.
way, but I don't want my kids to watch that stuff.
No.
So if I don't want my kids to watch it, then I probably shouldn't watch
Yeah.
it either.
I was talking to Vic about. I was getting snipped up by Vic last
Vic
night.
Snip.
Vic Snip. And we were talking about how hard it is to not watch like crazy stuff on the
It's
internet.
really hard not
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
We all want to watch a train wreck, right?
Yeah.
You can't not watch it. You're driving along, changing the radio. Here comes a train. Honk, honk, honk. Oh, fuck, that guy's not going to move. Nobody turns their head on impact. People watch it. And part of that, I believe, is it's an instinct we have that has clearly been handed down. And not having that somehow meant you didn't pass on your genes. So whether it's that behavior or it's attached to some other thing that is a necessary thing, or you did not pass those genes on. Maybe it comes from back when we were walking around on 4 legs. Like there's a reason why we have it. And the more rude it is, the stronger it is. And the more it attaches to some other trait that's now successful, then it becomes even more of a trait. That's how evolution works.
I think it's got to be just as simple as like if you're in a peaceful nature scenario and there's some action.
I hear chirping birds.
Yeah, you check out the action. That's
Yeah.
it. And as the action gets more intense, the more attention you pay to it, because
Right.
you know, it could be something that's going to kill you, could
You
be
are
some
drawn.
food, something like this.
You also have a run instinct.
Yeah.
We all have. And you also have a run to it drive and a run from it drive.
Yeah.
Both of those are clearly successful genetic traits that we have.
But you're completely safe behind the screen.
Yes.
So you don't have to
Yeah.
run.
You
can
jerks
just
are.
go, "Whoa."
Jerks certainly
Yes.
are.
I think it's one of the, and that's probably why, in a way, what I cringe at when I watch like something horrible, like some brawl in a street where like, because sometimes you know that person got fucking hurt so bad, and I'm picturing their life after that,
Yeah.
not what's happening in the thing, and call it the whatever, the altruist in me. I sometimes am very saddened for that person's injuries or embarrassment or whatever it is. And I think as the kids now in the panopticon of our phones, one little event could literally ruin your life, in your opinion, that goes around in high school. Oh my God, everyone saw he got pants on the thing. Like just one tiny thing.
Yeah.
And you can't escape it because it is the panopticon.
Everybody's watching.
Everybody's
Everything
watching.
you do.
Everybody.
And your parents
yeah.
too.
Brutal
They're on
examples of
podcasts.
that in my family. Yeah.
And in this weird age, our phones are listening and keeping track of everything we say and do, where we were, and all that.
When
And-
I'm sleeping, when I'm awake, what my
AI
heart rate is.
Yep, and sometime soon, or maybe even now, some AI will be able to go through all of that in minutes. What would have took a records clerk 100 years. Or let me
Oh yeah,
find the
that's
paper where-
done. Yeah, that's been happening already.
Yeah.
It's like sorting through all your data, and it's like this one is
Yep.
fit for combat.
Yep.
This one is human
You can
shield.
download it from the companies. You can
Yes.
go to Instagram and say download all of my information, and it will tell you all the information they've collected about
Yep.
you, your location, what you've
viewed,
watched, exactly.
how
Yeah.
long,
Yep.
what you paused on.
Mm-hmm.
There was a video. So Vic actually has like extremely entertaining feed on Instagram of like the most ridiculous stuff that you could ever imagine. And there was one that was like that where I watched it and it was like, oh, where a drunk couple was like on a sidewalk and the gal like jumped backpack style on the guy's back and he was like backpacking her down the sidewalk and then he tripped and he was holding on like this. So he didn't put his hands out and then she was holding on. You heard her head go
God.
like bam, like so hard on the concrete. And those ones are like, I feel like it's like seared in my mind, you know?
Yeah,
And
that
that's not
kind of
healthy to
stuff-
see.
like somehow that breaks my heart.
Oh yeah, it's
And
horrible.
maybe it's because when I was younger, I would often be that idiot drunk.
Oh, totally.
Or I
Yeah.
would see one of the other idiots who, because we're all a drunk, have something awful happen.
Yeah.
And it's like when I was in high school, maybe this is related to my sense of chivalry or misogyny, but when girls would fight, I would get nauseous. I couldn't watch girls fight. It would make me nauseous.
Huh.
When like you see someone pulling on the girl's hair and it like just ugh. But I could love when men fight. It's like men are supposed to fight. It's a duel. But when women would have one of those fights over some emotional thing, I saw no sport in it at all. It just seemed like this horrible thing. Like, why are we watching this? Why aren't people intervening? Why aren't we stopping it?
Yeah, I don't know. That's this desensitization to
Yeah.
violence. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it fully.
I don't know.
I think that's just what it is now, the desensitization to violence. Because, I mean, if you think about it, I've seen this happen where I've watched fights my whole life, right? So I don't have the same reaction that like a mom who's never watched a fight in her life comes in and starts watching MMA and sees some dude get knocked out, and she's like, "What the fuck is that?" I
Her
don't.
reaction's emotional watching MMA.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like watching violence and watching fighting increases my blood pressure and my heart rate. It doesn't
probably
matter
does
how
for most
long that
people.
I've done this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That if I'm watching something and I'm invested in it, I physically can feel the sensation of my body, even if I'm not thinking anything, even if I'm just thinking this is normal. I feel like it biologically heightens things, and I'm not really that interested in it at all. If I'm not fighting, I don't really.
Now, if from my combat-based perspective, that means you are correctly in a state of think straight.
What?
You're thinking straight.
Oh.
So even if you're watching MMA, if you're having that reaction, that is the think straight part of your brain that's having that reaction. And if you don't have it at all, you've trained so much sport and art that when it does happen, you won't have that little fire of think straight.
But I feel like I always had that because, like, when I was young in high school, if people started fighting, I always wanted in. Like, I gotta get in. I gotta get in. I gotta get in. Where's the cops? I gotta get in this. Let me in.
I was kind of like that too in a weird way. Yeah.
You're one of the.
I get agitated and I just gotta get in it.
Let me bang, bro.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I can't watch. I gotta do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could watch and love women's MMA. But for some reason, call it from my childhood, maybe because I have two older sisters who were beat up, whatever it is, I get nauseous when I see girls. I'm not saying women athletes, girls in a fight.
What about
more than boys?
I want to break them all up or join them or something.
What about different animals in the wild?
Oh yes, and there's
I love animals.
Yes,
in the wild.
What that brings me to is the truth of evolution by natural selection. Truly is it's the law of the jungle out there, and one must eat the other. You know, will make.
Does it make you nauseous?
Will make great pets. No, but what kind of?
It's kind of sad. I get my heart rate goes up too. Like I recently watched Obama narrated a series. Have you guys seen it? It's on Netflix.
The Oceans.
The Oceans. Yeah. That's right. It was the oceans, and it went over
Obama?
each. Huh? Yeah, it's narrated by.
It's like voiceover
by
kind
Barack
of thing.
Obama. Yeah, he narrated.
I think
I don't feel like his
Morgan
voice is
Freeman.
that dope for that.
Morgan Freeman had one too.
That makes sense.
He did Planet Earth.
He did
Planet Earth.
He
Yeah,
did
yeah,
Planet
yeah.
Earth, but the one recently I watched the whole thing. It was very well done, and like when they're coming after that seal, and he's just hanging. The killer whales are coming after the seal. Is like hanging on the ice floe. Like I get that same kind of feeling.
But
I mean, I don't necessarily want to jump in that cold
But
water.
I feel like you probably feel that because they're telling the story.
Yes.
Of like,
and I'm seeing that poor seal, and one of them gets eaten.
Right.
Not to ruin the thing for you guys.
Yep. Part of you relates to the seal clinging on life, and part of you relates to the hungry predator. Like,
Yeah.
I hope he
I'm
gets
the
a
orca.
meal because if that mom whale needs food, because otherwise it's going to be sad what happens to her offspring, and that's just that mishmash of how evolution works. And I think at least it's true for me. I remember when I finally really grasped what evolution means. And people sometimes think that spontaneous generation is what happens. Like all of a sudden
Mutation.
a monkey man has a human kid.
Yeah.
But like they don't realize the process of how slow changes.
Mutation is a driver of evolution.
Yes.
Sometimes.
When that
Very rarely.
hits you,
No, it is.
I can definitely see why it offends religious.
The genes have to mutate because
It removes all God.
It does. Yeah.
It removes all another intelligence agent acting on.
hold on a second,
screwed
because
up the
I
whole
grew up
story.
very Catholic, and I
That's
was
true.
taught
Catholics
that
have a way to
in Catholic religion we believe that God created evolution. Why
Created
can't we believe
evolution
that?
or created man?
created evolution, created science. Catholics do not deny science. They do not deny evolution. They do not deny all the truths of, what,
Yep.
like some religious people do deny. They say it's a theory. That doesn't mean it's not a fact.
On a
It's like,
purely logical level, in a simple Newtonian world, those are two things that cannot exist simultaneous, and that's where the intellectual philosopher would think that that's hypocrisy, or would want to ask you, so did God like write out the rules of evolution and say here? And
no, not like that.
right,
Like science is, everything is God, right? God is out here.
Yeah.
And science is a thing. God is everything. Then that means science is part of God.
And in an Eastern
I grew up very Catholic.
religion, yeah, it means though that like from that Western monotheism thing, God definitely cannot be all good.
By definition, no,
Right.
it can't be.
Or he's not all powerful. Because if he's both,
I would just say it's neither. There is no good or
Yeah.
bad. It just is. We associate a meaning with good or bad. A lion doesn't think it's bad to kill its cub.
right?
It just does what it needs to do. It's not thinking like
The
this is bad, I
males
shouldn't do
I don't
that.
think the females kill their
Males
cubs.
do, yeah. Male mammals tend to be
The
ethically
jerks?
worse in an objective way. They're ethically worse than female ones. But some would argue out there that no, it's the females that really cause all the problems because the men have to control them.
Yes, because we don't keep our mouths shut.
I was reading about
Damn it.
some animal the other day where they like mate and then the female kills the male.
Yeah.
It's like,
The black widow.
Widow spider does
is that what it
yeah.
does?
The black widow.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Hyenas are a matriarchal culture.
And
One
elephants.
of the
And
rare
orcas.
mammals, yeah.
And bonobos.
Yeah.
And sorry.
All right, let's wrap it up. Q&A.
Male seahorses have the babies. Did you guys know that?
Yes.
Yeah, male seahorses have the babies.
I was gonna say,
Those little trannies.
did God invent martial crafts? That's my question.
Yes, because by Melissa's stance, God created everything.
God
So
created-
anything
God
that is
created
under that.
everything.
In
Yes.
that
He
sense,
created our
yeah.
brains, so therefore our brain created it. So
There.
That's
it's all God.
correct. God is the reason.
I can accept that.
All right. All right. Let's move on.
Wait, real quick. Are we selling these?
We do. We
Okay.
are,
We sell them.
That's
Yeah.
yours.
This is mine.
That's yours.
Oh.
Yep.
Take the
Did
hint,
that come from the
Stinky.
box?
Yeah.
You got to tell me to remove it from the
No,
inventory.
I'm just kidding.
Is that a large?
That's a large, yeah.
Okay.
Usually
Did
a
you give
gift,
one to
a gift
Tillman?
of a fragrance soap.
No,
is
I
like,
haven't. I
You
should-
smell bad.
No, you don't. Actually.
This
You actually
for you.
smell
Go
good.
take a
Thank you.
shower.
You're in the clean category.
Oh, it's a good baby.
So pretty.
All right.
We got to pitch that.
Yes.
So,
Here.
yeah.
For those who are watching, let me make sure that they can see this. Combat-based soap. It says, life is not a problem to be solved. It's absurd. So go train.
There you go.
Go train, guys.
I like that.
You can buy this on
Combatbase.com.
combatbase.com.
That's easy.
Do you have a gym shout out?
Well, I actually wanted to do a real quick shout out to SoCal Combat Club with Professor Danny Suarez and his wife Jocelyn
Yeah.
Suarez, because they just got a new gym location.
Yep. They did.
And they moved over to Anaheim. It's 1035 North Armando Street in Anaheim. So if you're in Anaheim, check them out. SC3members@gmail.com. You can shoot them an email. And Danny is now
He's-
5th degree black belt
Yep.
under Chris, former professional
Yep.
MMA fighter.
Pro MMA.
They do mixed MMA,
He's
mixed
the
martial
IFL
arts.
long. Yes. He's a well-rounded, incredible combat sport expert who practices the art, and it will work in the street.
And he's also going to teach at our combat base camp this summer. He's going to do a
Yes.
section, an MMA section. So that should be really fun.
It's also a very, very nice person.
Very
Yes.
nice person,
Yeah.
funny. And Jocelyn is wonderful as well. And she's doing like the kids training over there.
Oh, that's
Cool.
She's a black belt under Danny and I.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. We can look forward to that. Moving on. If you want to get a question in here, podcast@combatbase.com, or you can hit the hotline 949-791-7763. Okay. We got a text message. Quick one. What is something you guys changed in your mind over the past 5 years? It could be anything.
Ooh.
Oh, I had one, but I forgot. Something you change in your. Oh, I know what I was gonna say.
What?
I was gonna say that it something having to do with parenting. Like that if I just yell loud enough, maybe my kid will listen to me.
Yeah. Well, that's a good
Gotta
one.
change
It
that.
don't work. Just saying. Not with this particular individual. He is the
Yes.
most willful person I've ever met my entire life.
Yes.
That's
And
good.
yelling does not
In that,
work.
yes, in that, I have absolutely learned the hard way from screwing up that modeling correct behavior is the most important thing I could possibly do. I want him to grow up thinking no matter what it was, Dad kept his cool. That's what I want to teach.
Nice.
Not, there's a line you cross where I lose it.
Yeah, that's a scary thing to be parented by.
But I
But
think
common.
that's
It's probably
kind
the
of
most common one.
It's more common
unfortunately
than you
that's
think.
our natural default because
Yes.
I mean I don't know about you, but that for sure was like that
Yeah.
in my family when I was growing up. I mean my dad was like not
You go
nice
back
and-
at the generations, it was standard.
yeah.
You
just
you
beat
mouthed
you.
off, you got beat.
Well,
My
you look
grandpa used to get locked out of the house and he had to kneel on beans or something. He's 100.
You look at the gorillas at the zoo. That's how it works.
Yeah.
The little kid can screw around, and then when they screw around too much, they whack, whack, right?
Which is why it took us, like most people say, instead of being the year 2025, it ought to be the year 12,025. So approximately 10,000 years ago was when we began to record language, to do this thing that humans do so well, which is collective learning. And I know the individualists out there hate anything collective, but we really do learn collectively. And it's taken us 10,000 years just to get to a point where we'll even ponder whether hitting is good or not.
Well, and so in that way, because I oftentimes find myself thinking that our culture is so terrible for kids because of the screens and the iPads, and that the kids aren't out playing as much and they're on these screens and
Yeah.
they're not thinking independently. But at least we're waking up to being better examples
Yes.
of not be like nonviolent parenting and stuff like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's like a well-researched topic,
Mhm.
and people have shown that like your child has the best chance of growing up without being hindered by feelings of anxiety and low self-worth.
Yeah.
If you parent them in the way that you're describing instead of in the way of hitting them. Not to say that like authoritarian parenting doesn't work sometimes. Great people, I'm sure, have been produced from that type of parenting, but
Because it was standard.
I think
Yeah.
it's well known that like there's a better way. And I think it's sort of like, do you want to be at the level of the gorillas in the cage, or do you want to elevate consciousness as a Hegelian Taoist?
It does, yes.
Raise little Taoists.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Okay.
I could claim that same one.
Mhm.
All right, moving on. We got another text. Texts are coming through.
Woo,
like that.
thanks guys for the texts. And gals.
Yeah. Hey, love your podcast. I'd like to know if you think the Gracie self-defense system moves are functional in a real-life self-defense combat scenario. Example, single hand collar grab defense, overhead knife defense, standing headlock defense, etc. As in the book Gracie Jiu Jitsu by Grandmaster Helio Gracie. I'm not talking about the Vale Tudo MMA style Jiu Jitsu training. If they are, I think he's saying if they are valid,
Mm-hmm.
is there any evidence showcasing their effectiveness? Also, what's the way to train them effectively? If not, why not? Reason for the question is a lot of people feel like they aren't effective and they're trained as sort of a kata without good dynamic resistance. And so it would be better to use moves trained in sparring for self-defense instead. Given you're able to know they work against resistance. Thanks, Dave.
So, if who do I think will win in the fight where we throw you both in a pit? The guy who trains 6 months in MMA and then has a 1 hour class in Gracie self-defense, or a guy who trains 2 years the GU but hasn't ever sparred.
The MMA person,
Right.
you think the MMA person
Clearly,
will win?
clearly,
Because I've been hanging
beyond
out
a
with you.
shadow of a doubt. Because that triangle, that's why it doesn't say Train Street. It says Think Street.
What about just defend themselves against, not fight each other, but defend themselves against somebody who's trying to kill them?
Too weird. Too many things. What kind of attacker? Armed attacker. Multiple.
Armed attacker.
Who knows?
Knife with a
I
knife.
would
defense.
still. I have more faith in the guy who's trained MMA with a weekend clinic in a GU than I do that the guy who's trained twice as long in.
What about
the
without
GU.
a weekend clinic?
I still tend to lean towards
The MMA guy?
combat athlete.
Well, Suni, you've done a lot of the GU stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
do you
you
think?
fought professionally.
And you do
Yes.
MMA.
Yes.
Divide yourself in half.
I think that it's this is what I'll say. I think I can see someone's point if they say this doesn't seem applicable. If, to Chris's point, you're not thinking street. Because if you're doing these techniques and you're just doing it for what it is, that's not going to work, right? But if you're thinking, if this is actually happening to me, what would I really do? Then you start to change. And I think there was a drill that we did at Gracie's a while back. I fucking love that drill. That's the first time I've ever done it in my entire life. We did some knife defense stuff and how to take knives from people and stuff like that. And then they were rolling and he threw knives all across the class.
Yeah,
love
And he's
that.
like, if you see it, you can grab it and you can stab them with it. So now it's like we're doing jujitsu, but like someone else is trying to throw a knife and they throw it, but they throw it close to you. And now you both see it and now you're both scrambling to get the knife. And it's
we
like,
should do that here.
You become very hand-oriented.
and it forces you to like, oh
Years
shit.
ago, I used to
Yeah.
do that all the time, and I would have like send in a guy, okay, hop in, help that guy go, and then all of a sudden it's 2-on-1, 2 blues on a black belt. Like I used to always
Play games,
those.
Yeah.
little games.
street training.
But
Yeah.
it's
That's
smart
probably
though
why I-
because I know it's been more than one person got killed with a knife when they were trying to help
Yes.
someone else and they were high-level jujitsu
Yes.
practitioners.
So I think that kind of drill gives you, one, the awareness of it like helps you to pay attention to your surroundings, but it also is giving you that training of like when the person has a knife, how do I stop them from being able to use that knife?
Yeah.
Like it's number one priority versus like if you only do the katas of like, they do this and then you're like, ha, and then you move, like that's just not going to work. What happens when they really try to stab you?
Which we're also going to have
I
a
was just
knife
gonna say,
defense section
Red
at
zone.
our camp this summer. Another reason to come to camp because you at least, if you have a little bit of awareness with martial arts skill, can go a long way. Like what Chris is saying, if I just practice 1, 2, 3, but I have this realistic timing training and then I get some awareness and I'm thinking about it, that it's going to make me more prepared.
And the best program regarding knives I've seen thus far is Jerry Wetzel's Red Zone.
Who's coming to camp?
Who's one of my black belts, who's taught U.S. Marshals, the German Special Operations. He really does have a very simple, effective knife program. For both when you both have a knife, when only one guy has a knife, all that.
So come to camp and take a stab at
Come
it.
to camp.
Yeah.
Let me just put an asterisk on this. I think we answered his question. And I don't think that anybody at GU or anybody with the last name Gracie is out there saying that all you need to do is learn these couple of moves.
I agree.
that's it.
I agree.
I think everybody at GU, and I think everybody with the last name Gracie believes that you need to think street, train sport, practice art.
They just didn't
So,
say it like that. He did.
I think just the fact, I think what I'm realizing from doing the show is that like people see something like a clip of you talking about,
I know. Oh, it's so frustrating.
and then they
Joke.
just see the one thing. So they see the book that Helio Gracie made a book that
And
shows
then they
techniques
impose a context that isn't there.
that
Yes.
somehow that the idea was that now you just need this book and you're good to go.
Like somehow
don't
I'm
think
going to
that's
go
the idea.
around and teach some women some watered down form of jujitsu and say, now you're safe in any self-defense
Right.
situation. Like I don't feel like I'm safe in any self-defense situation. I've been training jujitsu and
I
other
don't
stuff
feel
for
like I'm safe. in
yeah,
this
I think I
situation.
feel that there is a threat out there,
Yeah.
you know, that I have to be aware. And I feel like, unfortunately, it's even greater in this day and age because of the mass shooter and whatever. And I'd prefer to stay home. The
Yeah.
end.
So to answer the guy's question, it's
We answered it.
yeah. It's,
Yeah.
I think
there you
it's valid. You just need to be able to also have realistic training along with the self-defense.
You need to do it all.
Thanks,
Which
street
is
training.
ultimately what you will do in a GU as well.
Yeah. Think street.
And
train
martial
sport,
arts is a can of worms because it's
Yes.
not like one thing fixes everything.
Yeah.
You're not going to survive every situation just by learning
Yeah.
to box or to do jujitsu or to do knife defense. Or it's like you kind of need to put it all together if
If a-
that's what you're after.
If a person,
Otherwise, you could just stay home.
yeah, if a person did say you have 1 year to train only one single thing, it'd be clinch. Not boxing, kicking, not grappling. It would be clinch. Control the clinch.
Which is wrestling,
Which is
Greco wrestling,
Greco and judo.
Okay, he says do Greco and judo.
But that's taking me out of context too, right?
Yeah, he said, BJJ Eastern Europe. Chris Haueter says judo is all you need.
Yeah,
Dude,
Oh,
BJJ,
Got you. I got you.
BJJ Eastern Europe's cool. That guy's super cool.
He sure is.
But
And
he
his
likes
article
to take things
pulled
out of
my
context.
quotes out of the context.
He sure does.
And then
Come
I
on.
get these DMs. Fucking, I heard you're talking shit about Hickson. Like, what?
No,
Uh-huh.
that's insane.
Yes, that's
The-
what he does. Sorry, we love you. Keep
But
writing.
he gets people to click on it.
yeah, keep
That's
keep
why.
clicking.
They
We
click
like
it, and then the article
That's
actually.
the thing. I hate clickbait. How often have I read such a great nuanced article and I want to share it, but the article, the headline's so fucking clickbait, I'm not going to share it.
I have to
Because
say
no
that
one
to
reads
people
the
too.
article.
Like sometimes I'll send people stuff and they're like, "What's this about? The title looks weird." I'm like, "Don't ignore that. Just read it, watch it." Yeah.
I think the articles are always balanced, and then he cites the
Yeah.
podcast, and
Yeah.
then, and I think his jujitsu's sick. That guy, it's kind of similar to the
Well,
way
thank
I'm
you,
trying to
that
train.
guy,
Yeah.
for watching and posting stuff about us,
Yes.
even if your titles are clickbait.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
for
there
the
you go.
record, they are clickbait.
I think everybody knows that, right?
Click on it. No, not everybody knows that they send him messages saying he's talking shit about Hickson.
Yeah.
Well,
You gotta be. To be fair though, I don't want to say most people, but a good percentage of people only read the title
Yep.
and
Right,
like maybe
that's
the
what I'm
first two
saying.
sentences, and they're
Exactly.
like, "That's it."
well, this is the same mentality where you see that there's a book by Helio Gracie, and you think that that's all you need for
He
self-defense.
Yeah.
wrote the book.
So-
See?
I just,
You can't judge a book by its cover or or an article by
By
its
its title.
clickbait.
life requires one spoonful of critical thinking. Okay?
Only
So
one?
just take
Wow,
one.
only one,
Yeah.
huh?
Well, it's
Spoonful of sugar?
one I'm just saying is more than none, right? So it's like you just need to do a little bit.
Just influence a little bit.
Reminds me
Little
of
bit.
that. You ever seen the intro to the Powerpuff Girls where he's like, put a little something nice and everything nice and blah blah blah, and he spilled something else and he spilled stupidity. That's what he spilled into him.
Whoops.
That's classic.
All right.
All right.
We got a cue to hit here. And
Let's
of course,
answer it,
I
and we'll
just
roll up.
Yeah, it's the last one because we're at.
Yeah.
I don't want to say how much time, but yeah.
okay.
Hey guys, Alan's here.
What up, Alan?
We love you, Alan.
Yeah.
So my good friend, who is a woman, has started Jiu Jitsu with me. So she's having a lot of fun and she's loving it and everything. Only difference is me trying to guide her when she asks me questions, and everything is a little bit more difficult. I don't know why, compared to a man. I feel like I have to explain it more thoroughly. If you guys can give me some advice, I mean, you guys know me. You guys know my personality and everything. If you guys can give some advice on how a man can guide a woman in jiu-jitsu. An example is she's just seems frustrated, staying heavy on top, things like that, not getting swept around, or she just says that we're really strong, and I'm trying to teach her how to use less strength and more like leverage and things like that to break guards and how to stay heavy and things like that. But thanks for the podcast and everything you guys do. Have a good day.
Wait. Before, because I know you're about to go in.
Go ahead.
The only thing I'll say, I know you're going to say stuff about whatever else he said. It takes time. And I think people come into jiu-jitsu at times and they think that they're supposed to understand everything right away. And I think based on what he's saying, it sounds like she's not understanding what we talked about today, leverage, balance, base. It takes time to get that. So she just has to get out of that mindset.
They will be handed information that then they can use whenever they want.
Right.
Let me just say before you go in, I think it sounds like you got
Go ahead, Tobin.
Sounds like you got a real soft, dumb woman there, buddy. And I think the solution is you just don't teach them. They're gonna figure it out anyway.
Oh shit. Okay. Alan, dear. First of all, I don't think this is a gender issue. This is not a gender issue. This is just teaching someone. Like neither of you brought up gender when you just spoke. I think that a man.
I did.
Oh yeah, I forgot about you. Toe Woody over there.
Makes a big difference.
I think that a man could be frustrated. Maybe a man expresses his frustration differently, or doesn't talk about it, or fights harder, or lets people choke him and doesn't tap until he's going. They're in general, right? Because I'm sure there's women like that. I know that when I first started training, I let not on purpose, but people hyperextend my elbows to the point of injury because I didn't want to tap. Yeah. And I'm a woman, so I think that, I'm gender fluid. But yeah, there's no like all women are this way and all men are that way. I think that it can be helpful for me. I was learning jiu-jitsu from Chris. Now, you said this was a good friend. I don't know how good of a friend it is. But if you're teaching a significant other, I think it's really difficult.
Yes, it is.
And they actually become more frustrated with your significant other who's a teacher. And then when he does something like kick you and you fly across the room, you just want to like wail on him. And that actually happened,
You were holding a kicking shield.
Yes, I was holding a kicking shield, which I did not know how to hold properly and had no concept of base. And he kicked it and I flew across the room and I jumped on top of him and started punching him, right?
Yep.
Because I'm getting emotionally upset about this situation.
And I only half-powered that kick too.
I know, it doesn't freaking matter though. I was highly untrained.
Yeah,
so the other thing is a lot of women do not come into this having played rough with boys their whole life, or wrestled, or done taekwondo, or any kind of martial art. I came into this never having brothers, never having roughhouse that much. The closest was like doing some like wrestling around drunk when I was a teenager, but I was like a cheerleader. So I didn't really have that much athletic experience. So sometimes that's the case. It does for some of us women. We might think we don't want to smash somebody, so we have an issue with like putting our weight down on somebody. We might, I've seen in general teaching women that they can be less aggressive in those ways because they think they don't want to hurt somebody. I've never heard a guy tell me I don't want to hurt somebody, but I've had so many women say I don't want to hurt somebody, and I'm like, you're not gonna hurt me, or you know what I mean? Like you might hurt each other. If you put the white belts together, they might hurt each other. They're not going to hurt me.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much as opposed to thinking gender,
Yes.
you think their weight class and personality. And picture if they were a male who had that same weight class, athletic skill, and personality.
So, but what I'm also proposing is that if your relationship is too close, that you might not be the best instructor for this person, and that allowing the person to have their own journey. Don't try to like micromanage it and help them get better too quick or whatever. Chris set me up with Cindy Omatsu. I did classes with her. I came to Chris, but it was really nice to have that balance of somebody else who I wasn't in an intimate relationship with to help guide me. And then I became less frustrated with Chris, and the better I got, the easier it was. But it did take me, I was a white belt for 2 full solid years before I got my blue belt, maybe longer than 2 years, which I know everybody has a different experience. But I felt like it took me a really long time to learn the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. And it doesn't mean anything. That was just my path and my journey. And what I did learn, I learned well. And, and I'm grateful to both Chris and Cindy and every other teacher that I've had. But it's a process. It's not, and you can't be so focused on the destination that you forget that it's just a process. And if your friend isn't having fun, then that's the whole point, right? Is that we're trying to have fun. So they have to let go of that part of, in the beginning, you're supposed to lose a lot in sparring, right?
Yeah.
If you're winning all the time in sparring in the beginning, then
why do you need jiu-jitsu?
Why you can? So I would say, pep talks are probably the best thing. Like, it's okay, just keep coming back. The only thing you could do, if you want to learn this, the only thing you could do wrong is stop coming. But you have to just keep coming. There's no fast track. It's your own process. I can think of a couple women that I've worked with that did require me to break things down. And I would feel sometimes, and men too, women and men, this isn't a gender thing, both sides of the spectrum, where I would show them the same move literally 100 times and they did not get it. But they kept coming back, and a couple of them are black belts now. And they eventually learned the move. So I think you can't be so focused. It's like me with a freaking straight ankle lock. Maybe that's never going to be the thing. You have to just be patient. And then maybe one day I'll get this really rad instructor that'll come in, and however they teach me to do that ankle lock, I'll finally figure it out. And then I can quit jiu-jitsu.
Nice. Well, good luck, brother. We'll leave it at that.
All right.
Let's wrap this.
Let's wrap it up.
All right. This camera?
Yep, that camera on 3, 2, 1.
Pound, like, and subscribe.
Well, we all have targets on our backs these